If you're considering buying or selling a home in the US in 2024, you're going to want to watch this video. Now, you could go to another YouTuber's channel like Saks Realty or Reventure Consulting, and they'll tell you that the housing market is crashing, that you shouldn't buy a home right now. It's a terrible time to buy. And I'll be honest, they have a lot of really good points. And we're going to talk about those in this video. But the truth is much more gray than they make it seem. It's not as black and white as a lot of people depict it out there, right? Home prices could crash, sure, and we're going to talk about that in this video, but I also wanted to give a holistic perspective about what's going on in the housing market and the upside potential that it has. Now, people like Reventure Consulting, they've been calling for a home crash for about 4 or 5 years now at this point. And if you listen to them back in 2018, 2019, 2020 about how housing is going to crash and you held off buying, where are you at today? You're looking at a much more expensive home price than pre-pandemic, than those past few years. So that's really what's at stake. And that's, again, this video is to help you make the best decision for your home purchase or home sale. Before we get into it, my name's Liam O'Reilly. I'm a realtor with Jerry Riley Real Estate. All my contact information is in the description. If you have any real estate needs, reach out to me directly. Happy to help you, even if you're not in Vermont. So let's first talk about some of the bearish sentiment here, some of the sentiment to the downside. So if you follow any of these economic channels or read any of the economic news that's out there, you've likely heard about the yield curve, right? The 2-year is inverted with the 10-year. The 2-year treasury is inverted with the 10-year treasury, meaning that the yield on the 2-year treasury is higher than the yield on the 10-year treasury. So you get a better return investing in 2-year treasuries compared to 10-year treasuries, which historically speaking, this is a great indicator to show that a recession is looming, because the money, the markets out there, the people investing in these treasuries are locking up higher interest rates, or I guess would rather lock in their interest rate for 10 years because they think that rates are going to drop at some point in the near future due to some sort of economic turmoil. And that's why they're locking in their rates over the 2-year treasury. So again, that is definitely bearish for housing. That's definitely a position that you could take. You could take a look at this data and you could say, yes, housing is going to crash. We're entering into a recession. But recessions don't always lead to declining home prices. So there's something to keep in mind there too. Some other points that you might hear online. The delinquency rate on credit card loans, all commercial banks, is above pre-pandemic levels, and it's on the rise. It doesn't show any sign of stopping. I mean, when you just look at that chart, it's clearly trending upwards. It's not flattening out, at least not yet. And inflation is really eating into the average US consumer right now, which, the less money that people have to spend, the more people that are in credit card, that are credit card delinquent, the less buyers there are out there in the housing market. On top of that, consumer debt is at an all-time high, as you can see by this chart here. You see the far right where we're at. We're over $1 trillion in consumer debt, and that is steadily rising. And that doesn't even account for the buy now, pay later companies like Affirm and Afterpay. Their debt isn't in this chart, so it's actually higher than what this chart shows. Again, all valid points to say that, okay, housing could come down in 2024. But let's take a look at some of these charts here and see if we can get a better understanding of what's going on in the housing market. So this is out of Business Insider. And when you take a look at the Housing Affordability Index, you'll see across the country, housing affordability is below 100. So that 100 mark means that somebody with the median income in the United States can purchase a property at the median sales price if it's at 100. Anything above 100 means that the median income can purchase something over the median sales price, right? Means that things are more affordable. Anything below 100 means that things are less affordable. So we're sitting below 100 right now at around 96, the lowest level since around 1985. But when we take a look back at the chart, we take a look at the 80s, and you can see the gray line here are where we had recessions. In the beginning of the 1980s, home affordability was sitting just above 60 on this scale. So it was much less affordable than it is today, right? Even though homes aren't affordable. And again, you'll hear this on these channels. Oh, homes aren't affordable. Nobody can afford to buy a home. Prices have to come down because people can't afford to buy them. Well, in the 80s, home prices were even less affordable, and we didn't see home prices drop. We didn't see them fall off a cliff because inventory was so low. So yeah, there weren't many buyers out there who could afford to buy, but there also weren't many sellers out there who were selling. So that created a stalemate in the housing market, much like we have today. And in the 1980s, they experienced a recession. Again, still no price decline. So again, just something to keep in mind here. Now, if we scroll down to what happened to home sales, again, it's similar to the 1980s where we've seen home sales drop off a cliff, right? And a lot of that has to do with higher mortgage rates. Less people can afford to buy a home, so less homes are being sold. But on the other side, less people can afford to sell their home uh, than they could in the past either because of these higher interest rates. And we see that in this chart right here. So this chart, the bottom line there shows where the average mortgage rate is, and it's sitting at just about 4% on this chart. Now, this is all the existing mortgages out there in the United States. So even people who locked into 7%, 8%, 6% over the past few years, they're factored into this chart here. And you can see that even adding those mortgages, adding those higher mortgages into the pool of all mortgages, the average of everything out there is still at around 4%, showing that a lot of homeowners are locked into a low rate. Now, why is this important? Because one of the bearish sentiments that you hear, or I guess another one that you hear oftentimes from people out there on YouTube, are that it's cheaper to buy to rent a home right now than it is to buy a home. And that's completely true. And we can see that from the Redfin data. So when we take a look at average rent across the US, average rent sits at around $1,700 for a 900 square foot apartment, where the average mortgage payment for the median price home, it's tough to see here, but it's at around $2,300. So about $600 more expensive than the average rental out there. So it is more expensive to buy a home. But we have to come back to this chart here to see, okay, sure, that's going to keep more buyers out of the market, but what is that going to do for sellers? Sellers right now, again, are locked into this 4% rate. So if sellers were to sell their home, one, they'd have to either purchase a property at these higher interest rates and accept this higher mortgage payment that we're seeing now, or they would have to rent and most likely pay more than what their mortgage payment is, right? If you had bought back in 2021, even with how crazy prices were, your median monthly payment is still at around about $1,600. So still cheaper than the average rent out there. So back in 2008, when people were selling their homes like crazy, a lot of them would sell their homes and go rent somewhere. They would stop making their mortgage payments. They would go rent. It was cheaper. It was more affordable than keeping up with their mortgage. But now, people, I think if we enter into a similar situation because of how many people have locked into these lower mortgage rates at these lower at lower home prices, people are going to fight to stay in their homes because their other options are pay this higher mortgage rate or pay a higher rent. And so when people are looking at those options and they're saying, okay, yeah, it's tough to pay my mortgage right now, but do I want to sell my home and pay rent that's higher than where I'm living for potentially less home? I mean, 900 square foot apartment, it's not huge. You know, many homes across the US are larger than 900 square feet, even at the median sales price. So do I want to sell and give up my, $1,500 mortgage payment and purchase a property and rent a property that's smaller for more money? You know, I don't know if a lot of sellers are going to do that. If I was a seller facing that choice, I'm not sure that I would make that decision unless I really needed the equity in my home. So I think moving into the future here, we could see sellers fight to stay in their homes. Again, keep inventory staying low as we move throughout 2024, which would keep prices where they are. Again, I'm not saying that prices are going to go to the moon this year. And look, there are scary indicators saying that home prices could drop in the U.S., but the data is much more nuanced. There's two sides to every coin, and the truth is a lot more gray than people make it seem sometimes. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home in 2024, take all this data into account. Understand that, look, home prices aren't guaranteed to drop in 2024 just because they're unaffordable, just because we might be entering into a recession. that doesn't necessarily mean that home prices are coming down. And you should use that to make the best decision for your home purchase. Now, I mean, one decision that could work out really well if you decide to hold off into the future, right? If you take a look at the yield curve, you say, okay, a recession's coming, maybe the Federal Reserve's going to drop rates. Imagine this scenario, right? This is where it could work out really well for you if you don't want to buy right now. We enter into a recession, Federal Reserve drops rates, unemployment shoots up to 10, 11%, something like that. We're in a recession, but you keep your job. Now, all of a sudden, there's less buyers out there. Things are a little bit more affordable for you because interest rates have come down and home prices didn't shoot up drastically because although people are fighting to stay in their homes, there's less buyers out there. So even though inventory is low, there's less buyers because there's more people unemployed. So in that situation, it could work out well if you're holding off on buying. But I personally don't think, based on this data, it's likely that we're going to see a home price crash in 2024. But let me know what you think. Leave a comment. I love to hear your opinion, and I learn a lot from you folks in the comment section. So thanks for watching. Leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.